It's such a daunting task, right? Hey, product manager, we need you to come up with the idea. We need you to build all the artifacts. You need to prove to everyone it's a great idea. And then you actually need to go and commit that idea to an execution level where you're going to get grilled by developers, rightly so, to make sure you're thinking of all the edge cases, scenarios, negative cases, positive cases. Then your QA team needs to make sure that they test the heck out of this thing so that the customers aren't impacted. Oh, by the way, you also have to test it in UAT. And when it goes live, no pat on the back, no parties yet, because in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask, did you provide enough value? And oh, by the way, if you're a junior product manager, we're going to ask you to do that once or twice consecutively. If you're a senior or lead or principal architect product manager, you're going to be doing that not only on the website, but on the mobile apps and internal teams. So when I think of community, you kind of have to have a little bit of mental calories to be able to be in a community and provide. But also product is so unique that to be in a community, I'm going to have to catch you up on our side of crazy, like what our version of crazy is, in order for you to kind of relate to and understand.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Ocel, VP of Innovation at This.Labs, here for another episode of the Leadership Exchange. Today, I am here with Jason Abdo. Jason is the founder at Product Protege and the author of the Product Protege Guide. Jason, how you doing?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing well.
That's great. Thanks so much for being here. Well, listen, I just introduced you as the author of the Product Protege Guide. I guess to get us rolling, can you kind of explain a little bit what that is and why you felt motivated to write a book about product management?
Absolutely. So I remember being new to product management and not having as much support as I really thought I would. I looked to others in hopes to kind of learn along the way. It wasn't the easiest journey. So really, as I spent 10 years in product management and had the great opportunity to learn from a lot of different people that I am the protege of, hence the name, I want to make sure that anyone else in this situation has an option. That's why I created Product Protege and the Product Protege Guide. Product management is not an easy job and can be pretty daunting if it's not done right. So I wanted to help folks build a mindset that allows them to zoom out and understand at a high level, what is the strategy and the vision that we're going after? How do I present those things? But really zoom in. And I think this is what was missing from the space is what are the practical and tactical aspects. So whether that's the templates we provide, the Product Protege Guide, approaches, use cases, you know exactly what your next move should be. And the way that I've gotten signal from those who have spent some time reading the Product Protege Guide is it stays on their desk. And it's not something that you read start to finish. Is depending on where you are with your project, you can pick it up and hopefully what you learn that day, you can start using right away. So I wanted to make sure to have something that is truly a guide that helps you and a handbook that stays around with you throughout your career.
You know, it's really interesting that there's just certain parts of business which are this way and others that maybe are less that way. I mean, many millions, if not billions of pages have been written about sales, right? I feel like there's just a million places you can look to find information about sales. But when it comes to like leadership, people don't, I mean, some people write about it, maybe in grandiose terms, or you can read some biography of, you know, some successful business person. But, you know, why is it that way? Like, what is it about product management that's made it so that there isn't as much content for people to easily find about the right ways to do it? Is it just not mature enough of a science? Is it changing so much? Like, what's happening?
I think it kind of came from this idea of where we took business analysts and started to ask them for a little bit more, or we took managers of business analysts say, hey, well, what is your strategy? And we started to fill a gap that necessarily the workforce was not filling naturally from the college education, et cetera, because there is no really college degree for product management, at least at this point. There's probably some classes now that are starting to come. I think it's more of a newer experience or discipline, that has ultimately been fit, whether it's the business saying, hey, go and do X, or the development capability of how we're going to actually ultimately bring a capability to life. But no one in the middle to kind of play, are we balancing customer experience and technical feasibility and business value in the right way? So I think someone maybe smarter than me asked that question and we said, well, we need to hire someone to do that. And maybe this is 20, 30 years ago as product management started. And now where we are in 2024, there are a lot of product coaches and resources that are really starting to come out. And some folks are doing an incredible job really bringing it to life, but there's still this element of what do I do day to day? So I appreciate the large grandiose approaches of product theory and how ultimately organizations should structure. But if you go to different product managers and you ask them, what is your role and what do you do every day? There is still that missing piece for someone to kind of be that glue for the co-creators that bring the capabilities to life. Why are we doing this and what exactly are we doing? Are some of the elements that I try to help and coach and provide people with advice to do. But to answer your question, I think it's a mixture of it's a little bit of a newer discipline, a little bit of a newer need that I think various other business partners, whether it's merchandising or legal or marketing, filled, but they had a very narrow perspective on the problem and didn't take time to say, well, how do we bring everyone together to the table and have someone be able to distill all this into one approach that we can now actually go and meaningfully provide, whether it was waterfall back in the day or now in an agile methodology.
Yeah. I feel like this is a mistake that a lot of companies do as well when they have new things, new disciplines that can happen. I've seen this with companies that have become technical for the first time. They're onboarding their first developers. And so the first thing they do is, well, we don't want to go all in on a new strategy. So what we're going to do is we're going to hire somebody that we can afford, which tends to be somebody that's more junior or maybe even just mid-level at the most. And they put them in a one-person organization. And they wonder why, their technical organization is so immature for so long. I've talked to these people. They are so hungry to learn what the right way to do something is, but they're just given an absolute blank page and told with very little wisdom from their career to build on it. And I think that a lot of companies then assess that maybe that experiment wasn't very successful. They didn't realize that they had sort of handicapped themselves from the first moments by not having that wisdom in their industry or in their organization. Is that kind of sort of what you've seen with some companies too, with product management?
Absolutely. That bright-eyed bushy tail, they come in, or they're honestly brought in from a different unit. That coaching element or that setup practice was not there. Maybe some LinkedIn learning classes that they're thrown to say, hey, figure this thing out. But those are very kind of generic and don't fit what they're up to. So then they start to build habits. And those habits are formed from external people saying, yes, that works, or no, we need more. And what their job becomes is a taskmaster for others to make sure that they have what they need to ultimately create and push forward. But what's missing in that is to take a step back and say, what's my own taste or own perspective on the market, the customer experience, the business value that we're going to provide? Is this actually solving a problem, or was this someone's opinion? So that's where I tend to think about that kind of transition in. We have to take a step back and say, either we're going to provide them a really nice environment to play in with what are the do's and don'ts within this organization, but really the do's and don'ts of product management, and where do we want you to kind of help us push forward, but where do we need your taste? And if any C-suites listening, the first thing they're going to say is, please make sure we're taking care of the customer, and please make sure along that path we're adding business value, because if there's no business, we can't take care of the customer. So if we can do those two things with our vision, strategy, roadmap, and ultimately all the artifacts that follow to promote and envision kind of how your co-creators will push forward, then I think we're going to be in a really good place. But a lot of people don't get that pitch when they first join. What they get is, hey, here's the 10 things we need to do or analyze. I'll see you next week. Good luck.
Yeah, and another thing that might happen too is that you end up with organizations that have a lot of superstition. And by that I mean, if you are coming from an immature sort of organization or organizational structure, you lack the ability to properly assess the impact of your work. And so you might be prone to believe, like, my team wins because I wore my lucky socks today, right? In the absence of having mature ways to measure your outputs, you're going to kind of just believe that the weather's changing because of the things that you're doing, right? So you might end up with those kind of product organizations where somebody feels like they just have their finger on the pulse of the customers, but it maybe is more of an accident or more of a happenstance, or they don't actually realize. And I feel like a lot of times organizations can have that idea of, these kind of advancements can be compounding. If you're not making those adjustments early on and seeing the effectiveness of what you're doing and then optimizing, you could have a very stale product for a long time before you hit that inflection point, and maybe your customers sort of abandon you for a competitor. And at that point, it might be too late to recover. So your thoughts on kind of how people can keep themselves aligned, at least on that side of evaluating the success of what they're doing?
Absolutely. I think your product team structure is a mirror of your organizational priorities. Make sure you like what you see. So some of the better organizations that I have seen structure their product teams based off KPI. So what is a key performance indicator that we want to drive within the funnel? So you might have people top of funnel where, let's just take an e-commerce example. Hey, when they come into the site, if they're going to search, what are the KPIs in search that we care deeply about? And how do we structure product folks where their job is to drive that KPI, whether it is search relevancy, whether it is once they land on a search results page, how often are they interacting with filters to kind of refine the results? Or let's take it to cart and checkout, where what is your cart conversion rate? What are the capabilities that we can launch where your ultimate goal is to drive this KPI? Show me a roadmap on that. And I think in organizations like that, it is very clear what the success looks like. And with that clarity, your team team can ultimately build strategies around it, what's important for the organization, with a lens from the C-suite, as well as from their customers, their co-creators outside of the development lifecycle, and of course, their developers. So I think if you structure in a way where the KPI is the ultimate goal for that person or that person's team, you're going to end up in a place where the product managers don't just fill roles, they're building curiosity on that KPI, critical thinking, and then the ability to ultimately execute. And when I tell you this, product managers that share that perspective with their co-creators, what they're going after, that developer, that QA person, that analytics person, that scrum master have a shared sense of ownership on that KPI. So not only is it good for the product manager, but also their co-creators that are ultimately helping bring to life those capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't realize it, you can be like you said, open. You can also be a little bit sappy. I mean, I've worked in corporations where, every year the management came out and said, here's our 4-point roadmap for the year. It's the year of, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's also more than a little bit serious. And listen, if you have a good team, if you've recruited a great team, they will say those things in conversations to each other. Mm-hmm. And so if you think that they're not going to care or why would they, I think you're absolutely wrong. And I believe you're completely right here that product people, if you're talking about what you think makes things successful, you will start hearing people talk in those terms because that's ultimately alignment. And people seek that. Well-recruited teams seek that. They want to be in alignment with their product managers. They want to be in alignment with their managers, with their C-suite, with their strategy team, right? People want that. They need that communication.
100%. I've seen where the C-suite goes down to the epic level or user story level, and that's not necessarily healthy to me. Strategy is a secret, which is good for security, bad for alignment. And, for me, as a product manager ultimately has that KPI where they say, I can show my value at this organization by driving, whether it's basis point or percentages, this KPI. When they build that roadmap, the most valuable part of the roadmap isn't the timeline. It's the clarity it brings to what matters most and their perspective on what matters most, and how they showcase that is by how the problems, which a roadmap is just simply a bunch of tests, and the test is how are we going to fix this problem, just scattered in a sequence and priority that ultimately bends to the curiosity of the product manager. But that curiosity of product manager has to have intake from C-suite and other co-creators. That aperture for their lens has to grow enough to make sure that they're getting the feedback, people felt heard, but ultimately they have to make that decision on how are we going to prioritize as we push forward, what are the problems that matter the most, that will ultimately drive the most value for our customers, whether it is the net promoter score or it's the revenue that actually drives that their KPI ladders up to.
Wonderful. We have more of this conversation to come, but first we'd just like to thank today's sponsor. This episode is being brought to you by This.Labs, the experts in modern web development and consulting. If you're looking to scale up your development teams efficiently, or you need assistance in turning your innovative ideas into reality with robust proofs of concept, This.Labs has you covered. Here at This.Labs, we don't just build software, we build partnerships. We collaborate closely with your team to understand your unique challenges and craft tailored solutions that drive real results. Join the many companies that have accelerated their growth and innovation with the help of This.Labs. Visit us at this.co to discover how we can help you take your projects to the next level. Thanks to This.Labs and my team for sponsoring this episode and allowing me to have these types of amazing conversations. All right, let's get back to our episode. So, Jason, one of the things that we were talking about there was, again, kind of the impact and the influence that product managers have over the roadmap and the decisions that their teams make. I think one thing that I've seen a lot of leaders get into, and product people as well, is they kind of sit down with a problem in front of them and they sort of externalize what the answer must be. They assume there is an answer out there that they just can't think of yet, that they're expected to find, and they look for it. What does my manager want? What do my customers want? What does this want? And I find the best product people that I've ever worked with, the best people generally that I've worked with, are ones who say, based on my understanding, and I base it off of these criteria or these experiences or this information, I believe I know what our customers want and what our customers need, and it is this. What does a healthy product manager and a product team look like as far as how much uniqueness and their own personality and their own sense of what is right that they apply versus, how much they find the one correct answer that they were expected to find?
Absolutely. I don't know if there's ever one correct answer or if you take two
I
similar
wish it was that easy.
yeah, two similar product managers and you swap them and you kind of see, hey, are they going to end up with the same exact experience? I think the answer is most likely no, because I think what they learn on the way or what they're confident enough to ask the questions. The very confident product manager with a perspective, what is it? Strong beliefs held loosely. I think that needs to permeate like very deeply in the product manager's soul as they're going out to try to figure out, all right, we know the problem. First of all, is this really a problem or a symptom of the problem, right? The printer doesn't work. I hit the on button. Is that a symptom? No, the root cause is you didn't plug the thing in. So do we fully understand the problem? And then step two is, what are the observations to the problem? And I think this is where either ideas go to die or ideas go to ultimately flourish in their own, artistic way, right? So if we have a problem and our observations are solely focused on the customer, we don't kind of look at the business, we're going to come out with a more UX forward approach to solving that problem. If we look at it more of pure business and cost out, you're going to look at maybe we change our processes that our customers have to go through, not so much the design and the feel, but ultimately what happens behind the scenes for the business impact. Or you might go and say our observations are leading us to push to another team. We don't have any problems, right? On our side, it's more the pricing approach or the marketing or whatever it may be. So depending on observations, which in the Product Protege guide, we talk about a pitch deck. So what is my problem? Why is it a problem? What are the hypotheses and ultimately to solve this problem? What is our expected impact? What are our target KPIs and any additional materials? And really on one page, you're going to be able to assess that problem. I've taken the same use case and put product managers I really look up to through this, and it's extremely different pitch decks, but the expected outcome is very similar. That we feel like we can move the needle by 5% or 10% based off some of these findings. Now, ultimately, you throw that against kind of what's the level of effort, and that's where pitch decks also goes, like how grandiose are you thinking versus iterative, and is this multiple pitches or just one that captures kind of the large swath of things that we can do, but now we need to go break down into multiple, epics and user stories, etc. So it also is how grand does that product manager think, and what is their perspective kind of globally versus within what they typically can control and stay within their lane. So that's how I see pitch decks and taste kind of bring into the approach that product managers take when they're ultimately trying to solve a problem.
Explain a little bit more about those differences, maybe. I mean, you don't have to be super concrete about it, but what are the differences between these different sort of product manager pitch decks, and what do you see as being behind it? Is it just the different experiences that they have? Is it a difference in skill? Is it a difference in priority? What drives that difference?
I think a lot of it comes to comfort, kind of what they've seen in the past, things that they can see around the corner on. So let's take on-site search. If you're on Amazon and you start typing, men's shirts, you're going to start getting auto-suggest. So when we go to a product manager, say, hey, our search experience is not great. Can you go do some discovery to figure out what's going on? They might start right there with the auto-suggest experience and say, hey, let's take a look at whether it's, video session replay or other technologies to understand, like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, to understand how our customers interacting. Their pitch might just focus on this one experience because at the last job, this is what I did. And I kind of know the roadmap that we should have. So let me apply my experience lens to this issue and focus on where I know I can have impact. Where another product manager that has nothing to do with search, they're going to take a look at not only the auto-suggest, men's shirts and pants, or whatever Amazon ultimately provides, they're going to go to the results. Did I find what I needed in the top 8 results? If the answer is yes, then it's doing a good job. If the answer is no, how do we change our algorithm to bring the better search results closer to the top? Another one might look at it purely from a UX perspective because they're a product manager that came from a UX background, more in design. Their organization was set up where your discovery and wireframe product manager, you work with UX, you hand off to a product owner in IT to actually go execute. So their perspective might not necessarily be just the algorithm and how we can change that relevancy, but more of the how pretty is the page? Is it really easy? How many times does my thumb have to hit the glass on the phone to get the thing that I want done? So they might take it purely from a UX perspective and design principles and apply that in ways that they can ultimately describe to the design and the development and QA team what they want to accomplish on the product list page. When I see all my results, how does the left-hand nav look and feel? Is it easy to get to what I want? So really, I think it's a mixture of their experience and the organization. Are they set up to be a full stack product manager from idea all the way to launch, partnering with all the co-creators? Or do they have to play telephone game when it comes time to actually execute and pass it off to a product owner that sits in IT?
How do you react to that? That reality that there is such a wide variety of extremely different approaches to be taken, again, all in the vein of solving a fundamental problem, which was maybe the behavior of our search. is that is that a sign like of product management being very mature and just having that amount of creativity? I just don't know what to make of that variety, because I would think that like intuitively I would expect some leaders to see that and hear that exercise and say, that feels weird. It sounds like I'm hearing some people are just can only think based on the things they've seen before, so I'm not going to get enough variety out of them. And someone might be pursuing, we need AI search because they're always chasing the new thing, and they won't learn from the lessons of the past, right? And so it's like, but all of these are people who believe, at least my understanding of it, is people who believe that they understand the parameters of what is successful. They have a hypothesis, and with good sound logic to back it up based on the information from the product and the customers, and they're willing to take that effort. How does a business evaluate that and go, like that was a good experiment that didn't work out versus that was a bad experiment that did, or a bad experiment that didn't, right? Like how do you start to now process that wide variety of suggestions and know whether your product management team is working in a healthy way or an unhealthy way just because either they were a little bit lucky or a little bit unlucky?
Absolutely. I think it's a balance of still providing that product manager the autonomy to go and figure out what is truly the problem, but at the same time, an expectation that whether you're envisioning the problem, empowering your co-creators to develop, or elevating the experience to your customers and kind of following back, I think that's where, as I was, focusing on how do I help product managers the most is to, and, I know frameworks are a buzzword, but it's so important because if that framework can set an expectation with your C-suite on, hey, with every kind of less than a production support issue, anything that we're bringing live to our experience, whether it's websites, apps, internal systems, we're going through very distinct practices to make sure that we cover our bases as much as possible. So whether you're envisioning the product, connecting with customers, doing discovery, writing that pitch deck, which is a moment to pause and say, hey, everyone, do you guys understand my problem and the solution we're going after? Is it very clear? And if yes, then let's go and partner with the devs to understand a level of effort so we can get to an ROI. So now you understand our mechanism to prioritize is based off a return on investment, or if it's a separate metric like NPS score, whatever's important to your organization, we're using a very similar language across the business of how we're prioritizing across. Now, there's prioritization methods, Kano model, Moscow, but just within that pitch deck, having one page to describe exactly what you're going after, that will get holes punched through it, but at least we have something to look at as an org, and it's one page and not a 30-page waterfall style document where it's hard for C-suite to see all the nuance. Bring that nuance into a summarized version so we understand. And let that travel, get the stakeholder perspectives to make sure that you're not just thinking of auto-suggest or just the algorithm to bring the results, using the example from before. And then as we kick this off and we go to now start empowering our co-creators, that's when you bring in your development team, your architects, your QA, et cetera, to bring it to life. But that is a pause point at that kickoff to make sure, hey, do we all understand the problem we're solving and what we're actually not solving? What is out of scope? What is something that is a future roadmap item? So as we think about iterations and phases. So for me, it's the artifacts that are so important to make sure the C-suite has something tangible they can hold on to. So it's not a guessing game from their end on what are you going after. It's not a guessing game from the product manager side. Say, does this meet their strategy or what they're going after or what they want to ultimately accomplish? You get the ability to have that lens meet kind of both from the C-suite as well as the product manager in that pitch deck session so that we're all clear on what the next steps are before we invest a lot of money to bring this to life.
What I'm hearing, and I'm curious to get your response to it, is this idea that product managers, it's less about can you figure out what to build and more can you tell the right story? And I don't mean that in a pejorative way or a diminishing way, but truly like, can you tell a story, not just of what you'll build, but why what you will build will make an impact enough that people will understand it. And then it will work or it won't work, but you will at least, everyone will have been behind it. So it isn't so much a just trust me type thing, but it's a, this is my statement of the case. Does that sound compelling and reasonable to all of you? And getting that sort of stakeholder buy-in as well.
I've been part of or have helped hire many, many product managers, and the ability to storytell tends to be the ability to tell, does this person have intrinsic curiosity when they're ultimately telling a story? Because the story is not just, this is what we're going to do and why we're going to do it is, hey, I've been very interested in this space. We went through many iterations to understand and discovery sessions with customers, and here's what we found. You know, when you start telling a story through the eyes of the customer and the business and you bring it all together then into the solution, that is very compelling for whether it's C-suite or your customers, if you're at the optics level speaking to your customers, or more about an impact level speaking with your C-suite, I think it's uber important to be able to tell that. And unfortunately, that's not a skill that's easy to teach, which is why, as I kind of keep talking about this pitch deck, it at least provides a template to start the process of telling that story. And then you can add your own nuance and kind of technique on top of it. But at the very least, whatever your story is, we have a good sense of what you're going after. That layer is already there, whether you're good at telling a story or not.
Yeah, I like that. It's funny too that you talk about frameworks. I love a good framework because I think that sometimes they prove their worth over time. One of them, when you're telling stories, that I love doing, especially when talking about product, is personas. Like actually named personas. And it sounds sometimes like the corniest thing to do, to like invent people. But the amount of times I've been in conversation and we've saved ourselves from pursuing a really pointless path is when we asked ourselves, introduce me to the person who wants this feature. Like not, just, they can be whatever you want them to be. They don't have to really be in the metrics, but just tell me what happened to them today. When they woke up, what were they trying to do? What's going on with their company that they found themselves in this situation? And you find if people can come up with a really compelling storyline of who the person is that's affected by this, you really get a better sense of, is this worth pursuing? Or did we just sort of talk ourselves into something being way more important than it actually is?
I love that. I take the persona concept, which you kind of have mentioned, and I love it, and then apply it to a jobs to be done framework or model to say, hey, what did we take this person through? Is everyone clear on how many times they had to click, how many tools, how many conversations? And the problem is analytic maturity is not where it needs to be in most organizations. So they can't kind of tie the pieces together to tell that story. So then it ultimately is opinions, or we get one quote that then changes the approach that we do. And it's like, hey, that was just one person. But can we aggregate around these personas and run it through a jobs to be done framework to understand what are exactly for this type of person, for their intent, are we meeting them with the content that they need to ultimately get to an exit area where they feel like they were successful with your brand and your company? And I don't think we do enough of that, whether that's product managers or the UX team, partnership, or whatever it may be. That is something that we need to do more of as a product skill set and have as an expectation for product managers to go through. So I'm right there with you.
Where do you get some of your, where do you freshen up your ideas of product management? Obviously you have a lot of experience and I'm sure you work with really great teams, but are there particular places or people or experiences you look to kind of help, give you fresh outside ideas on kind of what to pursue?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time listening to the Shane Parishes of the world, the Tim Ferrisses of the world, and what I'm finding, given product management is still net new. Now, there's John Cutler, who's in the product management space, extremely brilliant and writes really deeply about product. I don't know how attainable it is from someone that's a little bit new, but having been, for over a decade, I can really kind of take that apart and really understand how it affects me. But for me, I tend to look outside of product management to try to find themes, mental models, and approaches that work outside of product and bring it in through my own lens of product management and what I've been able to accomplish. So those are some of the places that I would go to kind of learn a little bit more about, not necessarily product, but elements that I can bring into Product Protege and then help ultimately bring that to life for others.
Do you think that product managers and just managers in general have created the types of communities that necessarily should exist? I mean, I think about like developers. I know developers have lots of meetups where they share kind of the things they're working on and talk to other people and talk about the problems they're solving. And I know the executives have luncheons that they go to, because they don't have the time to meet. But I feel like there might be a gulf in the middle of organizations where like we sort of lose community in the management space. Do you have product management community, either mentors or people that you speak to in the industry or events that you attend? Or are we really dropping the ball here as a community of just not creating enough opportunities for product managers to really speak to each other and maybe give a talk about, here's my business case, here's the way I approach this, and like help share that with other people?
As a product manager, I'll say we can always do better because that's ultimately my approach. No, I'm lucky to be in the Atlanta area, and we have people like Jason over at Product Coffee building a community of practitioners. And I think there's some others like Product School that tries to do some great events. What I would say is product managers feel too busy to be in communities. I've considered that kind of approach. And while they say that, I still try to kind of provide a Product Protege place where people can learn and kind of gain an understanding together. But I think people feel honestly too busy. It's such a daunting task. task, right? Hey, product manager, we need you to come up with the idea. We need you to build all the artifacts. You need to prove to everyone it's a great idea, storytelling. And then you actually need to go and commit that idea to an execution level where you're going to get grilled by developers, rightly so, to make sure you're thinking of all the edge cases, scenarios, negative cases, positive cases. Then your QA team needs to make sure that they test the heck out of this thing so that the customers aren't impacted. Oh, by the way, you also have to test it in UAT. And when it goes live, no pat on the back, no parties yet, because in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask, did you provide enough value? And oh, by the way, if you're a junior product manager, we're going to ask you to do that once or twice consecutively. If you're a senior or lead or principal architect product manager, you're going to be doing that not only on the website, but on the mobile apps and internal teams. So when I think of community, you kind of have to have a little bit of mental calories to be able to be in a community and provide. But also product is so unique that to be in a community, I'm going to have to catch you up on our side of crazy, like what our version of crazy is, in order for you to kind of relate to and understand. So I want to believe that we can do better, and I hope to be part of that journey as others are doing that right now. But I also feel product managers feel so busy that it's hard to join communities. At least that's the signal that I'm getting from the folks that I've kind of interviewed to ask, hey, does it make sense? Would you want something like this? And they say, the last thing I want to do after work is talk about product, which is, to me means that they have just run out of energy. And that's probably not the right perspective to have versus, hey, I can learn a lot from others that can see around the corner. Let me make sure I have enough percentage of my day so that I can, be part of a community and learn. So I hope for the latter, but I'm seeing a lot of the earlier. And I don't know what the right perspective is yet on how to break through that.
It's funny, too, because I'd spoken to Charity Majors on this podcast once, and she was saying much the same thing for people that rise to the level of engineering manager for the first time, is that you are doing so many things for the first time. You use so much emotional and mental capital every day to grit through work that when you leave work, you don't really want to be doing more work-like things. So if you're going to go join a community, it's like you want to join a softball team. You want to go do something that's just anything but the thing that is taking so much of your time and focus and effort. Well, listen, I mean, you've written the book on the Product Protégé guide, and you obviously speak very passionately about this. So I guess to wrap it up, it might be interesting to sort of make the case for why people might want to go down this. If anybody's here listening to this podcast that's maybe in a different area of leadership and has thought about going into product, or is heading down that path, maybe what's the better side? Like, what is the put a bit of a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow for them as to like why they should be excited about this role?
So I think about product all day because I love it. I fell into a career that ultimately will take care of you if you spend the time kind of crafting your approach to product management. And of course, I'm here to help. There's plenty of resources on different websites that can help. But what I would say is it's a career that's not going anywhere. I think there's some folks like Brian Chesky going more to program management, et cetera. But I firmly believe you're still going to need someone to balance that customer and business value. What you'll get in a product management role is the ability to use the science that we help teach, but also bring your own taste and art to the discipline. And I think that's really, really exciting where your job isn't the same every day. Every day you get to see something go from an idea to in front of millions of people, depending on the size of your business, and see, did it actually make a difference in their lives? So, I've worked at companies like the Home Depot and others where, some could say, oh, you're just helping sell more hammers. Well, no, that hammer helps and builds a house, and that house is going to be somewhere where someone lives. And if you can find that you were part of that journey, what an incredible story that you can go to bed every night knowing your tomorrow is going to be a little bit different, and that little bit of difference is going to be a little bit different help for someone else. So I love the fact that on Monday I can launch something and on Friday it's been in front of millions of people. And I don't know if there's a lot of career paths that have that opportunity. So if you're looking for a career that honestly pays really well from a financial perspective, you get to learn so much from developers, QA, analytics, and you get to be kind of the center of that universe for that capability. I think it's what an incredible opportunity to learn. And if you love learning, every day is different and you will never have a day that's the same. So if you have that intrinsic curiosity in yourself, you can tell a little bit of a story and you're open to learning how to execute at high levels and be successful with whether it's repeatable frameworks like we teach or all the other frameworks in the world, there are the resources there to be successful. And it is a great, great career that you can start as an analyst of product management all the way to chief product officer. And there's not a lot of career paths that have from 0 years experience to you're running as a chief product officer of the whole product organization. So what an awesome, awesome opportunity to start learning about product if you're not in it, or if you're in it now to remind yourself how awesome of a role you get to be in.
That's awesome. And what a great industry too, where, even at the junior level or the associate level, that you can make the kind of impact that really scales up. I'm sort of reminded of a movie I enjoyed quite a bit called Margin Call. And there are two characters at one point are having a conversation, and one of them is explaining how before they were a banker, they used to design bridges, and so they once designed a bridge that went over a little connected two sides of a river that people used to have to drive around. And he just did the math, and he said that's driven by this many people every day, so it's that many miles every week. It's that many lifetimes that have been saved in the 10 years of this bridge. Like, of all the things I've ever done, I've made millions of dollars, but you know what? Nothing will ever be as impactful as that thing. And I love that I think about product is that you can save lifetimes of frustration and sheer just time just because of the scale of the types of products we build in this environment. And that's a pretty humbling moment that you can do that at any level of this hierarchy, just through sheer scale.
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, hey, that's going to be it for us today and this episode. Thanks so much to Jason for being our guest, and thanks to each of you for listening. We hope to see you all next time. As we close out, we'd just like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs, one last time, who would like me to remind you that sometimes it's hard to bridge the gap between business objectives and tech implementation, and hey, it can get messy. This is trusted by top names like Meta, Google, and T-Mobile, and they love helping business leaders fulfill their strategic digital initiatives. Check them out at this.co. One more time, that's THISDOT.co. All right, hope to see you all next time.